let's just get right into it. You wrote an awesome article that I read last year. I shared it, and it was really insightful. And it sounded like you really went through some stuff. Tell us your story. Can you hear
Could you
me?
repeat the last part of the question? Kind of like
Uh,
cut off a little bit.
yeah, I just, I want to hear it from, I want you to sum it up. So, you were from Brazil, and, when you were younger, you were living through um, a harsh environment. And why don't you tell us about it?
So actually, my mom, she had 2 degrees. She had a degree in business and she had a degree in law. So she was a lawyer. She worked for the government. The place that I come from, in many places around the world, the most basic form of business that they have is tourism. So we had beaches, and that was about it.
Yeah.
So the only other big employer was the government. So my mom worked for the government, and it's not like she was very big in politics or anything. It was just a job. There's 2 big industries. Hotels don't need a whole lot of lawyers, so she worked for the government, and she happened to work for the party that lost, the Conservative Party at the time. That was back when the left took over. And at that point, they engaged in a lot of political persecution, firing anybody who, like I mentioned, the government was the biggest employer, so they were firing everybody who had any connection or had worked for or had any views that could have been against their socialist plans.
Yeah.
And basically, the way that they governed, it wasn't very conducive for businesses to come over or to even get started. They were overtaxing everything. They were killing the economy. So there were no businesses. They were firing everyone who didn't agree with them. And basically, there was nowhere to work, nowhere to live, nowhere to do anything. So eventually, as time went by, my mother, she had her savings, but this lasted for so many years. They were in power for 16 years. So
When did that start, just as a base?
I think it started in 2013.
Okay.
No, 2003. Sorry,
2003.
2003,
Okay.
2001,
Sure.
2003. Yeah, the early 2000s. So she ran through her savings. She thought that since she wasn't going to get a job, she might as well start her own business. So she put all of her savings into this business, try to keep it alive. And then, of course, it died because nobody could sustain a business at that point. They were overtaxing it to death. They basically don't want anybody to compete. They want to dictate the rules for business ownerships. They don't like small businesses, and we're seeing that the comparison to that with the lockdowns here, where mostly small businesses were affected uh, by this rule. So
Yep.
anyway, um, we went through a period of homelessness. We went through a period of a lot of uncertainty. We had no money, no way of income. My mom was by herself. So it went on, it dragged on for many years. And eventually, as I started, I was very, eventually I was, at first I was blaming my mom. I was like, how could you be involved in politics? Like you see what he did to us, right? It's such a terrible thing. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to take that path because I know how terrible it is. But I saw the need to get involved because as time went on, things didn't get better. They got so much more worse. It's like I had this hope in my heart every time there's the New Year's. I had this hope, like, oh my God, New Year, everything's gonna be better, things are gonna improve. Look at what they're talking on TV, the president. So they didn't. They got exponentially worse to the point where I couldn't even imagine how worse it was gonna get. It was like I thought, maybe it'll get a little bit worse, but it's like holy moly.
Yeah.
So I just got tired of turning the New Year's hoping things would get better. and I got involved. There's this, even though my city, so for reference, where I lived, it was probably one of the poorest places in South America. They have a very desert-like type of climate. So what the left does is that they keep people under their control by giving them a whole lot of welfare. So there's no jobs, but there's a little bit of welfare, and there's that dependency, right? Especially in that area. So it was one of the bluest areas in the country, and I was able to gather like around 100,000 people to go to the streets to protest. I was part of many protests. Of course, I didn't do it by myself. It was a whole group of people who helped organize, and I helped organize it as well. And we would, so for example, the government would find out about our protest, and they would infiltrate. They would pay the campaigns and they had the HQs like they have here, like the Democrat HQ, the GNC HQ, the local government HQ. So they would pay actors to go and show up and break glass and try to make everybody look bad. So at first, there's a lot of public support for the protest, but then every single protest, there's somebody who's wearing all black, breaking doors, breaking windows, breaking everything, breaking into private property. And then people started, hating on us. And among other things that they would do, other very pervasive techniques. So people think that government would only act from an official level, but they would act, in the shadows. So one of the things that they would do is that wherever the path of the protest is, they will put in, they'll put out an order for the local businesses to close. So you can imagine the equator sun, everybody's marching the middle of the day. There's no winter, there's no nothing. It's always the same climate. So you're marching in the asphalt for a long, long time, and there's nowhere you can buy water. There's nowhere you can. So people start passing out. I'd have to talk to businesses and get them to please open up. So we want to buy. We don't want to steal. We just want to buy. So they will open like this much between the gate and the floor, and we will have to crawl under to get into the businesses and buy water because they were so afraid of the government.
So just to maintain like no, we're still closed. See, our gate is kind of closed. So, from like a farther distance, they would seem closed. Is that why they would do it that way?
Yeah, because if the police was looking, then they would seem closed. But then we would get on the floor, crawl inside, and then inside it would be open. The AC was on. People were buying drinks. They were eating something. But and I had to keep telling them like, please, and they kept like lowering the gates. Please, there's nobody. But we needed it because 100,000 people, everybody's hungry. It's the whole day type of thing.
Yeah.
So it was one way to hurt the protests. So they used several techniques. They went on TV, used the media to try to hurt us, but eventually we moved on and we got the president to be impeached. So that was good. That was great.
What year was that? Just curious, what year?
I think that was 2016. Okay. I think that was 2016.
And then is
because
that when Bolsonaro took over or was elected? I don't know too much about down there, but okay, continue, please. Don't let me stop you.
It's okay. So then we got her out of power, and her vice president took over, and he stayed in power for about a year and a half, 2 years, something like that, maybe a little bit less. And then there were the elections, and he was so incredibly hated by both the left and the right that they kind of like, it was a big thing. So then Bolsonaro showed up, and the left actually paid, and this is true. There's a lot of articles, there's a lot of information out there, and actual proof from the inquiry that the federal police did on this incident, that the individual who stabbed Bolsonaro during the campaign trail was a part of a leftist group, was very engaged, was an activist, and basically was receiving money, was having his lawyers paid for. Nobody knows who was paying them. It's still under investigation, of course, but yeah. So they've taken on this tactics of having somebody go stab the guy because they don't like him. So it's a pretty nasty business. And just to, I guess, conclude a little bit, I know everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's not gonna stop talking. I moved here to the US, and after dealing with all of that, I was like, my God, I can't handle it anymore. I'm done with politics.
Yeah.
It's behind me. But then I saw all the leading signs. I saw all the same stuff happening here to the point where I wish I knew all these signs back in Brazil. I wish I knew before they took over for 16 years and never, they wouldn't have let go of power if we hadn't done all of this.
Right.
So I've been trying to warn people ever since I moved here, ever since 2015, 16. I think around 2016 is when I opened a big Instagram account, and been trying to warn people and tell them, hey, listen, it's the same playbook. They play whatever they did in Russia, whatever they did in China, whatever they did in Venezuela, the same playbook. If we just pay attention to the signs and learn to recognize them here, maybe we can stop them before they do that kind of damage.